Well, Deborah, could it get any better than today? Yes, it can, because we still have so much more to come.
I know.
What is next?
It's like an embarrassment of riches. It's like, it's crazy. And here's Bobbi and Lee, a husband and wife team. And you're coming to us from California.
No.
No?
No.
I thought you were, sorry, I thought you were in California.
No. I haven't lived in California since 2001.
Okay. Okay, but when you did, you worked in the same...
Lee moved out in end of 2015. He's from LA, but I was in LA for 25 years. But yeah, we live in Carver, Massachusetts.
Okay.
You know, Cranberry Bogs.
I was thinking we had to put you near the end of the day because you were on Pacific Coast time. But I know I was responding to that because you shared a studio with George Hurrell, and so it was way back then that you shared a studio with.
Deborah's associations go all over the place. It all makes sense in her mind. You should see her desktop on her computer.
I know. But what can we say? We're in, what hour are we in? We're in hour 6?
27. It's a dance-a-thon.
I can imagine that you two are a little slap happy at this point. So
yes, we are. So much information we have. I can tell from our attendee panel that there's a lot of people who've been with us since 10 o'clock this morning. I mean, we don't know if they're still breathing, but logged on to Zoom. So
we definitely know a lot of them were. We had so many great questions in the last panel.
Yes.
So right off the bat, guys, we've been asking every guest here, and I want to get this from each one of you on the most personal level. What is photography to you?
No, ladies first.
We've heard you ask that question, and it's kind of interesting because I've never actually had anybody ask me that question in that way. So I think it brings kind of a different thing. For me, first off, it's magic. I mean, it's totally magical, but a lot of photography for me is the way for me to experience the world. Is that even though, some people say, well, it's like you don't really see what's going on when you have a camera to your eye. But at the same time, I think that what that does is it helps me to slow down and actually explore more, experience more because I am looking at it photographically. So I get more involved. And photography has brought me to things, and I've met people and seen things and been involved in things that I absolutely would have no other way to have access to. So, like George Hurrell renting my studio for 12 years, I mean, just that alone, but there's so many things that really touches, and the power and the magic, the power of how a photograph really touches you and affects you and can make you happy or sad or millions of things in between, or inform you, or just to touch you. That's never gone away from me. That magic has never gone away.
All right, you're up.
What
she said.
No, I think for me personally, photography is a way of sharing my inner experience of the world, and making that available to other people. So when I take a photograph, I feel more like, I don't feel so much that like I'm just capturing a moment in time as I am investing that moment with my own experience of that moment, and sharing that, or making it visible, I should say, to other people. So yeah, it's really just part of my artistic expression. But it's also a way of just really kind of investing my own personal reaction, my own personal experience of something, and making that visible for other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important question to me because, a lot of times we'll go, what is photography? And we get all these generic answers like that. But each of us, I think, really, when you kind of delve into it, it's so personal. And there's so many different reasons each of us got into photography, or why we want to share, or what we want to share. Do you remember initially the first moment you realized in your life you went, I really want to do this as a profession?
Okay, you go first this time.
When I was a little kid, I made plastic models. It was a big thing when I was a little kid, and I remember there was a series of models that were based on Universal monster characters, right?
Yes.
So there was the Mummy, and there was Frankenstein's monster, and there was King Kong. And I, made it, glued it all together, painted it, all this kind of stuff. And I remember taking a picture. I wish I had this picture, but I had a Kodak Brownie camera, and I had placed the model on my front lawn with my apartment building in the background, such that the perspective.
You're doing this forced perspective that early. That's amazing.
Which was like 12 inches tall, right? It made it look like it was bigger than the apartment building. And I really got off on that sort of thing, where I was making it, crafting an image so much as more than just like taking a picture.
Yeah.
I was crafting an image. So I think that was probably the earliest experience I had where I felt a lot of gratification in the whole process, in the whole photographic process. And I really, I started photography in high school, but, and then when I went to college, I decided I wanted to explore filmmaking. So I went to UCLA and I got a degree in filmmaking and got out and could not get into an accident. I mean, I couldn't find any work in the industry. So a friend of mine had been assisting in Los Angeles with commercial photographers and said, hey, you should give it a try. And that's, when I took my background, I had some technical skills in photography, but that's where I really learned. I mean, I like to call it the school of hard knocks. And, that's where I really learned photography, was on the job, in essence. And,
oh, wow.
And that's where I really, really became, I fell in love with it.
Oh, so what he said.
What he said. You didn't start that way. That's not what happened for you. I don't buy it for a minute.
I'm going to make this short because we have a lot of stuff to do on George.
Wonderful.
But I just wanted to say that I like anybody else, I had a Kodak Instamatic. My dad was an amateur photographer and had an enlarger in the basement. And no matter how many times he explained to me what it was for, I couldn't understand it, because by the time I was old enough, he wasn't doing it anymore. But my senior year in high school, we moved into the largest high school in the country, and it had a photography lab, and we had the teacher was fantastic, and Ralph Mercer. In fact, he's still my good friend.
Wow.
And my first roll of black and white film that I shot in the wintertime was I lived behind this gorgeous park. I mean, like miles and miles of just nature, and I won first and second place in a local photography contest from 2 pictures from my first roll of film. And I probably do have them somewhere, but I remember them so clearly in my mind. And I think that I was really struck by the impact of the black and white and the composition and the design and the light that just like sucked me in. And I was a senior in high school, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is something I never thought about before. I was interested in the arts. I was interested in music and theater and writing, but it was like, boom, all of a sudden. And that was it. I mean, after that first semester of having that photography class, that was it for me.
Well, I'm sure everyone's here to go into your session here. Before we start, I'm sure you want to hold the questions to the end, and we can get some questions answered. There is a Q&A panel, so if anybody has questions, please direct your questions to that. So we'll ask some questions to the end of this. And guys, why don't you take over and share your screen or do whatever you're going to do, and okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. I want to give you a little background. We were just talking about this. Lee and I have been married for 278 weeks. Oh, he wants us to share the screen, and we're not there yet.
You got to show the screen.
But I just wanted to say is that we met at the California Photo Festival in October of 2013, and Lee was teaching a class on Hollywood lighting, and then I told him that George Hurrell rented my studio for the last 12 years of his life. So that was it. The two of us just kind of like went crazy at that point. So, okay, I must say, I was totally intimidated. Here I'm teaching the class, but she's the one that had, George Hurrell personally, showing her everything.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I want to start to get into this, but in 1980, we actually knew George Hurrell's rep, and who was also, her name was Marissa Mislansky, and she was also Herb Ritz's rep. So Herb's first 2 years in business, he also rented my studio. But George was there for 12 years. And it was the greatest honor that I possibly can imagine. I mean, he was such a character. He was really interesting. He was old. He was in his 70s when he started shooting with us, and he died in 93, and he was there for 12 years. He shot from 80 until 92. And we had a million celebrities through, but being able to watch him work was amazing. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of history of George. And this is a very young picture of him. And, George mostly shot 8x10. Occasionally he'd shoot 4x5 in the studio, which was kind of like small format for him. But in those days, he started in the 1920s as a painter and got into photography. And he would shoot 8x10s. And, he was working for the movie studios, and they would just make contact proofs as the images that they would send out to everybody. So this is an early photo. This is, of course, one of his most famous, of Jean Harlow on the bearskin rug. And you've seen this, it's been on TV shows. Night Court, Harry Anderson had this hanging over his desk. But, it's one of his most famous pictures. But George he sculpted with light. I mean, that's what he did, is that he actually was like chipping away at people's forms and their planes of their face with light. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee, because he's got a nice introduction here.
So talking with the segue here to sculpting, here, this is a picture of Rodin. Now, George he didn't come to this all by himself. I mean, there's a whole history of people that came before him. And in fact, he assisted Edward Steichen for a couple of years. This is a photo by Edward Steichen. So what you have to understand is, prior to this period of time, this was the height of portraiture, right? And nobody really knew how to do lighting. They knew about the famous paintings, and the Rembrandt style of light was to sit your subject next to a window. So this is Edward Steichen, who's taking pictures of his buddies in Paris, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's placing his subjects next to a window. He's took a lot of portraits this way, and it gradually evolved his style of photography. Now, I put this in here because Edward was like the first commercial fashion photographer, and this was a very early photo in Vanity Fair, and it's horrible. I mean, the lighting on this is god awful. There's no highlight in the eye. It's
monster lighting.
It's monster lit.
Double monster lighting.
The shadowing in the face. It's terrible because Edward didn't know what he was doing. He was making it up as he went along, and gradually he figured out how to do it. So next slide. And so he gradually kind of evolved into this very theatrical style of studio lighting, where you can see the very dramatic. It's rim lit. It's a very, very dramatic lighting, and he was developing photographically how the painters were painting something called chiaroscuro, where you arrange to have highlights placed next to shadows. So here you can see the highlight behind the set. It's the figure's almost silhouette there, and it's high. There's a lot of contrast between that arm and the light on the background. And next slide. Here is I think one of the real illustrations of this effect, where you see the lit side of the face is placed against a black background, and you see the epaulette there, highlight against black, so light against dark. The shadow side of his face is placed against a light card that's being lit. The composition of his arm coming across, the lit fist against the black uniform, all of this is just composing with lights and darks within the frame, but arranging to place the lights next to darks. That's the chiaroscuro. It's Italian Renaissance painting technique. So here, instead of paint, of course, they're using light. And George really became sort of I feel like the ultimate expression of this whole chiaroscuro approach.
I was going to say, but George assisted Steichen. You didn't say that.
Yeah,
you
I did in the beginning.
Okay, so he kind of got a little bit of it, of that from there. But George was a painter first. He was in Laguna Beach and was painting. And then one of his friends, he was friends with Pancho Barnes, the famous aviatrix. and she suggested that he get into photography. So this is another one of his really famous pictures of Norma Shearer, who is married to Irving Thalberg. And this is really what launched his career, because she was known as the girl next door. And she wanted to get this role in The Divorcee, was the name of the movie. And her husband thought, no, she's too wholesome. He needed somebody really sexy and kind of vampy for this. And he just said, no, you can't do this. So she personally hired George, and they did a whole series of photos with of showing her being really sexy and a whole other side. And she came and she presented them to her husband, and he looked at them and he went, oh my God. And he gave her the part. And guess what? She won an Oscar for that role. So, but here again, talking about the light against the dark and the posing. I mean, George was also a master at posing. And sometimes it'd be very simple and sometimes it would be more complicated. One of the other things is that a lot of people don't know this, but George invented the boom light. When he was in the movie studios, he could see the sound guys and they had the boom microphones, because he loved to put the hair light right on top of the head. Not from one side or the other, but directly on top. I don't know why, and quite often he would like to blow it out, so it'd be like one stop hotter. But he kept saying, I want to get that light in place. So he took home a microphone boom stand, and he was a great tinkerer, and he tinkered with it, and he got a light on it, and voila, there we have the boom light. So in this case, he's got the classic butterfly lighting, which he loved to do, the hair light from the top, which is really hard, and you can see that this is the spillover from the hair light coming here and also on the shoulder. Now also look at the fingers, look at the highlights on the fingers and the shadow. And I mean, George since he was a painter, he was very particular about everything. So there was no mistakes here. And again, remember, this is 8x10. This is no snapshot. This is people having to hold still, and he's shooting all with hot lights. He normally worked with the Muller Richardsons. They were the Fresnel focusing spotlights. Because, in the 1920s and 30s, that's all there was. Strobes weren't invented until the 1950s. And so that's all he shot with. And so he basically shot Tri-X film, and he shot everything at f/16 and either at 1 second or a half a second, or did both, so that he would bracket and he would always have 2 frames of each shot. Pretty much did that all the time. You want to talk about this one?
Well, this is another example of that chiaroscuro idea, where here the black suited, this Bojangles black suited figure is placed directly against a white card. And it's kind of interesting because his lit hand is crossing across that divide, which your eye is drawn right to that. And then you're sort of bouncing back and forth between the face and that really expressive hand. And even the other hand is fingers pointing at that hand. It's like, so it forms a lot of dynamic sort of tension between those elements. Go ahead. I also love how George glamorized men in almost as like women. I mean, it's the same to him. It's all the same. So here, this is a very glamorized shot of Navarro.
Roman
Navarro, who was originally an opera singer, and he wanted to get into acting. But very carefully composed, again, the highlights and the shadows, that collar that's been turned up and the little lit inside hem of that, very specifically placed. I believe these catch lights were probably retouch enhanced.
Well, he was he was a great retoucher. He used graphite pencils on the 8x10 negatives, and quite often you'll see, if you can see my pointer, you see this highlight down the nose. He put that there. He would just take the pencil, because of course if it's darker on the negative, then it's going to be lighter in the print. And he always used a fill light, so there would be a fill light there, but more than likely that has been enlarged. So he wasn't always concerned about getting his main light getting a catch light in the eye, because he knew that he was going to get it from the fill and then retouch. Lee talks a lot about how George probably would have loved Photoshop. Now, I'm just going to give you a little aside, because Roman Navarro, the building that my studio was in was on Santa Monica Boulevard across the street from Samuel Goldwyn Studios. And it was built in the 19-teens as dressing rooms for the stars. And there was a train that went down a railroad train that went down Santa Monica Boulevard. So there was a tunnel that went from my studio underneath the street. and a door, they'd arise on the door on the other side to be able to get into the studio. But we had 2 spaces that we got into one, and then the next one became available. So we took it over and cut a hole in the wall and put in a door. One of our studios was actually Roman Navarro's dressing room. So it was kind of interesting to have this kind of come full circle. You want to talk about Humphrey?
No, you talk
Okay,
about
well,
Humphrey.
this is he's shot a lot of people many times, but again, the man's man kind of thing. He's got the tough stance, but at the same time, he's got just that slightly kind smile. So again, we have the main light coming from over here. It's kind of like a loop light. We have the hat light, which is up here, and that, of course, that light is spilling down onto the sides. And he's also got what I call a slash light. It's, an edge light on the face, which also hits the nose. Now, the weird thing about this is that these days, we would never accept that. We would never say, you never want that edge light here to hit that nose. But here, it goes whole back to the chiaroscuro. You've got tonality, and then you've got light, and then you've got dark, and then you've got it's medium, and then it's light again, and then it's dark. And it just kind of fits in. And then again, look at his composition.
I mean, it creates a very three-dimensional effect to have this placement of highlights and shadows.
Okay, Johnny Weissmuller was, an Olympic swimmer, and as that's how he got into the Tarzan role. And when he was working with us, we would always have to talk to the makeup artist because everybody's used to everybody matting down, and George was like, no, I want the highlights.
No powder.
No powder. He was always pushing the makeup artist away on the set. So, Johnny's obviously all wet here, and then I'm sure that this has been enhanced a bit in with his retouching. But, this was at the time in what was this, 1945 or something? I can't quite.
This is probably 28.
No, he wasn't
30.
No. Well, anyway, this was pretty racy to have a bare-chested man doing this.
He's baby oiled down. He's pretty slick here, but that was a trademark for George.
So the reason I follow it with Harrison, and he shot Harrison in my studio, and I'm going to tell you stories because I have a lot of stories about the people that came through my door. Harrison Ford was without a doubt the nicest person that ever came in, the most down to earth. He came without an entourage. He was very polite and kind. He had this real presence. He was really a very wonderful man. This was shot right after Witness, that he was nominated for an Academy Award. And George said, do you want to do the Johnny Weissmuller thing? And Harrison was like, no, didn't want to do it. But if you look at the shine on his face. It's that same kind of like that kind eyes that he had with Humphrey Bogart. And, that lean and all of that. And, it's again, this isn't a complicated photograph, except that there's so much depth to it that brings you out. Now, I'm going to tell you about George talking to people a little bit later. This is a colorized version because George didn't shoot in color. And actually, when he shot this, I don't even know if color film was invented yet. But, again, back to Jean Harlow, and look at those curves. Now, again, this was considered incredibly racy for the time because you can see her nipples. Okay, I mean, that was pretty wild for those times. But the strength of this, the arms have become so strong, and there's these strong vertical lines here. But then we have the curves, right? And the way that the light is coming and wrapping around, she's going into the light, and just this one other light that's in the background. He quite often, he would always bring 7 or 8 lights into the studio to shoot, but sometimes he would just use 1 or 2.
I happen to love the little devil in the picture right there.
The little devil right here. Okay, so Joan Crawford was his favorite model. I don't know why. I just know that he loved Joan, and he shot her probably more than anybody else. And if you look in some of his books, there's a great 2 pages that you can see next to each other because, again, he was a master retoucher. He would ever come in without any makeup, and she had freckles. And he would just make her look like she had the smoothest skin. And the picture that you'll see, there was wrinkles in her neck and down here, and he took them all out, smoothed her skin out, and did all that. So this picture kind of like breaks all the rules that we would normally do. First off, we would never shoot up somebody's nose, right? And look how much it squares off her face. I mean, she's got a total box head here. Yet he's got the butterfly light. He's actually, and then he's got another light from here. So you can see that there's two shadows. There's a main shadow from here, the main light, which is the strongest one. And then it wouldn't be a hair light if she was up straight, but she's not. So that's the one that's coming down here. And then he's got the fill light in her eye. Actually, looks like there's two dots in there. There may be two fill lights, or it could be that he added that other one in there. But, you know, again, the strength and the power, the symmetry, you know, people just weren't doing anything like this back then. Okay, now this is, I think, the cover of one of his books. You know, we've got Loretta Young and Tyrone Power, again, considered to be extremely sexy for the time, with her in the bathrobe and the naked shoulder, and oh my God, what are they doing? You know, it's interesting. You know, these days we would never have somebody wear a terry cloth robe. It wouldn't be considered very sexy. You know, they'd be satin or silk or something. I actually have a nude that George shot hanging in my bedroom, and it's a nude, and she's laying on a terry cloth robe, and it was shot in 1932. So, you know, I suppose, I don't know, maybe that's what George had on hand. I'm not sure, but you know, George, this was a very, very successful picture, and believe me, I've tried to reproduce this. This is a very difficult thing to do, to get those lights where she's lit, he still has light in him. Look at those eyelashes there. You know, the way that he's nestled in and how everything works, and oh, it's just gorgeous. But George was not above ripping himself off. So, you know, he imitated himself in the later years, that he would kind of go back to some similar poses. And, you know, so here we have, you know, Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas in the, you know, that
Romancing
the Stone series that they did. So, you know, this was, again, just kind of like doing that same kind of thing about they're not really kissing, but they're so close. So before I go on to the next slide, I have to tell you a story. During the time that George shot in the studio, he was there. He would come in about twice a month, sometimes once a week. It would depend upon what was going on. He was doing a lot of work for Esquire magazine. He was doing some movies. He was doing a whole variety of different kinds of stuff. But we went about a month, maybe a little bit more than a month, and we hadn't seen him, hadn't heard from him. So the next time he came in, we said, "Hey, George, where you been?" And he was always saying, "Oh, I'm just an old guy. I'm retired. I want to go fishing." And I'm like, "Well, have you been fishing?" He goes, No. He said, I had to go over to London. I'm like, "Yeah, London." He said, "Yeah." I said, what were you doing over there?" And he said, "I had to go over and shoot the McCarthys." I'm going, "The McCarthys?" He said, "Yeah, you know the guy who had the band, you know, the McCarthys." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you shot Paul McCartney?" I said, "I would have paid my way to come with you for this." So of course, it's just still another variation on the same shot. And Linda, being a photographer, was a huge Hurrell fan. So, you know, he just had a great time. He loved them both. He thought that they were both just terrific people. So you're going to see this picture again later on in the presentation. But what I would have done. Okay, here's another one of my stories. So Grace Jones comes into the studio, and I can tell the long version of this, but I think I'll just tell the short version. So, and she was dating Dolph Lundgren at the time. Now, George would rent props. He would rent, you know, chaise lounges and mirrors and columns and and art things and all kinds of stuff that he would use. He would normally spend a week or two thinking about preparing, planning, designing his images, and then come in and set up and play around a little bit. So, you know, Grace comes in with wigs and all kinds of costumes and plastic bustiers and like all kinds of wild stuff. She came in very late. She insisted on starting early, and she didn't show up until the middle of the afternoon. And she and Dolph would like look at each other in the mirror, you know, like kissing. And I mean, it was really, it was funny. So what happened was, at the end of the day, George was old. It's 1985. He was 73 or 4 or 5 or something like that. I mean, he'd been around for a while. So, you know, it was like 7 o'clock at night, 7:30, and normally he was done shooting at 5 or 5:30, and then, you know, he'd go home. So it's like 7:30. Oh no, I remember now. It was 8 o'clock, and I finally took her aside and said, "You know, I just want you to know that he's an older gentleman now, and this is way past the time that he normally shoots, and he's getting very tired." And she was like, "Oh, darling, don't you know, he loves me. I'm his favorite person that he's ever photographed." And I'm like, oh yeah, right. Thinking about everybody he's photographed in his life. Okay, so finally he was very kind. She'd come up with another wig, another bustier, and he said, you know, no, we've done that, we've done that. And he finally convinced her that they'd done the best. And she left, and we basically kind of like poured him into the car and said, don't worry, just, you know, we'll clean everything up, we'll put everything away, we'll pack up all the lights, come back tomorrow, just like go home. So it got me thinking when he came in the next day, and I said, so George, is there somebody, you know, I told him the story about Grace saying that she was the best, and he just laughed. And I said, so with all these people that you photographed, is there somebody that really has like really struck you more than anybody else, that has really made an impression upon you? And he kind of chuckled a little bit, and he goes, yeah, there is. And I'm thinking Humphrey Bogart, you know, all of these people, right? You know who it was? Arnie. It was Arnie. He loved Arnie. He thought that Arnie was the greatest. He thought that he was the nicest, kindest, most respectful man. Now, Arnold was actually in my studio a couple of times. Herb shot him once, George saw him twice. And after we had this conversation, he came back in, and when Arnie walked in the door, and you know, George was only about like 5'3", you know, he was a tiny little guy. Arnie picked him up underneath of his armpits and spun him around. I mean, they just like hugged each other and laughed and had a grand old time. Sharon Stone, a sweetheart. There again, there's that hair light coming directly overhead, right? So it's just kind of like burning it out. But everything was just like so glamorized. Okay, so I told you about Harrison being the nicest person ever, and this was the worst person ever. And again, I'm not, because this is public, I'm not going to be telling you the stories. But let's just say that I would never let her through my door. I'm just going to leave it at that. She was really nasty. However, I think that George probably did some of the most outstanding work that he did in his later life with her. Now, let's look at this picture. There's a whole lot of lights in here. Okay, he's got the main light is butterfly light coming from above. Okay, so that's coming from above. He's got two background lights. He's got what I call the hip light over here. Okay, he has another light that's coming over here to illuminate here. All right, and I don't know that there's any hair light here. I think that this hip light here is also kind of hitting there. And actually, there is another light that's lighting up the chair behind. Yeah. The chair behind. But again, look at the dark against the light against the dark, this silhouetted, the highlight on the fingers, the way that the hip is outlined. I mean, this was again not by accident. This is completely and totally planned, every single moment of it. Okay, and here's another one, just spectacular. You know, I mean, it's like he brings in the Chase Lounge and the column, and here he's just got the one light on her, and he's got the dress light and a background light. Well, this may be two lights here. This is maybe one light, and this is another light over here. But everything was just so incredibly well planned. Now, I'm going to go back to this one for a second. You know what? That's probably not a good example, because I haven't talked to you yet about how he would talk to people. We'll go to Mario, because I'm going to come back and talk about Mario again. But quite often what he would do is that, you know, it's 8 by 10. So people have to hold still. And he's so particular about everything. It isn't like, you know, today we shoot, you know, 30 poses in 15 minutes. He would shoot one pose, really concentrate on that, and then there'd be maybe a variation and maybe one other, and that would be it. And that would take, you know, all day, you know, half a day to get it set up, and then working with the subjects. So they had to hold that pose. And so after a while, you start to get stiff. And he would come over sometimes and just put his hands on their shoulder, and to get them to relax a little bit, just kind of like, you know, stroking their shoulders a little bit. He always had jazz playing. He was very much having music playing while he was working. But, you know, quite often they'd get a very stiff expression on their face. And so when he first started coming in, the first time that he did this, I was in my office, which was right in front of, we had the two studios. It was right in front of the studio that George shot at. And I'm going to pull back a little bit because this is going to be really loud. All of a sudden, from the studio, I hear, "All aboard! Once more around the park! Got to stop and get a cup of coffee!" And I'm going, what the hell was that? And he would do this or variations of that with just about everybody. And of course, they were already holding really still. And then they'd start to go, what is he doing? And they'd start to loosen up a little bit. And that's when he would get the picture. And he would do that like over and over again. It was just crazy. So this is Mario. Any of these new pictures, again, have all been in my studio. Okay, so Queen. Now, I was also very excited about this. This was, I think, their last album. And at this point, Brian May and Freddie Mercury were barely speaking to each other. In fact, I'm not even sure that they were. They were all pretty nasty. During this shot, he did Individuals at the Mall, and the current Freddie Mercury biography is a picture that George shot in my studio. So here he just kind of did the monster lighting thing for the light in the background, not on them, but for the light in the background. But
cast the shadow.
To cast the shadow, yeah. So George wasn't he wasn't a color photographer. So when he did color photography, he basically just put like colored gels on the background lights, and it was horrible. I mean, really, really horrible. I mean, I just I would never do anything like this. But that was color photography for George. Okay, so here's my studio, and here's the setup. Again, this was very simple. This is back in the days before there was big fancy studios. Here is the concrete floor, lath and plaster walls. This is the curtain that separates my office is here, storage is here. So this is the setup for the Natalie Cole album cover, and here he's on small format 4x5. So here is his main light right here. This is the original boom. This is the original boom light with his, tinkered light on top of it. That was his, and the rest of these, he would rent them all Richardson's. And so here's background light, fill light. This could be a kicker light. There's always one extra light. So, main light, hair light, background light, fill light, and kicker. So this was not uncommon. Okay, so here, this is Richard Settle. Richard and I and Nancy Santullo, we all shared the studio on Santa Monica Boulevard. And Richard assisted George for the last 10 years of his life. So Richard assisted on the Natalie Cole shoot for the Unforgettable album cover. So you can kind of see here, there's where the hair light is placed right here. So, and there's the album cover. Just really stunning. Okay, and for those of you who know me, this was taken a long, long time ago, probably 1990 or 89 or something like that. So anyway, that's Richard and me and George. So let's bring this into the modern day, okay? So now we're talking about how do we do what he did now? There's so many different ways to do it. So this is a picture that George did of Veronica Lake. The laying down, the hair spread out. So this is something that I did, and I used a Fresnel attachment on my strobe light, and then I actually had a speed light to add a little bit of a hair light here. Now I was fortunate here that I had a hair and makeup person that could design the hair for me. But so the thing about the Fresnel spotlight is that with that Fresnel lens in the front, it softens it down from being just a perfectly hard light. And you can flood it or you can spot it. The more spotted it is, the harder it's going to be. The more flooded it is, obviously the more coverage, but also the softer it's going to be. So you can kind of like fine tune where you want it to go. But quite often you really, he was always like drapey and leaning. So
this is one of my photos at trying to replicate the focusing Fresnel without a focusing Fresnel. So what I did was I used a digital projector, which could project a focused light, and that was my light source. So there's actually two lights here. There's a light on the lower part, which there it comes coming to me, right down here just for the dress. So there's a light raking across here to put something in the dress. Everything else is coming from that digital projector.
Now, notice that it says 2013. This is when we met. So he was. This was what he shot in his workshop as a demo.
So here, the slash is actually a shape that I made in Photoshop, just a white triangle, and I'm using the digital projector to project this shape across the figure. And one of the things about the digital projector is if the image is sharp, you see actually sharp pixels they show up as little dots. So you have to defocus the projector a little bit to blur those out. This was kind of an interesting, we had this belly dancer and it's all one light. So we got this interesting slash of this light reflecting off the sword, and it's coming across diagonally, so it's providing that second diagonal coming up behind the arm there. Everything else is just that one light bouncing around.
With a reflector.
And there's a reflector there to put that little edge in there. So you can get quite creative with just one light.
And this is the background you put in.
Oh yeah, the texture there is actually a Photoshop texture. It wasn't on the scene. It was just a regular white wall in the background. And this is one of yours.
Yeah, this was actually one that I did as a demo at Photo Plus years ago. And this is she's just leaning on a folding chair with a piece of material over it, and she's got the purple gown on, slightly desaturated. So I've got that Fresnel attachment that goes onto the strobe lights, and then a grid for a hair light. And the looking off, make sure you get the light in the eye, the darker shadow, letting the shadows fall down. So, but we have some newer stuff to show you. That's another, the Fresnel attachment on the strobe. Okay, so we're going to get into some newer stuff here. Actually, this one we just did in January. Yeah. We had a workshop at Hunt's in Boston. And this is actually using Profotos, and I believe that the main light is a 2-foot octa. And then there's, I think it's just a grid on the background. Yeah. And then there's another grid as the hair light on here. So this is actually two soft boxes, one from camera right and a smaller one from camera left. This isn't really like Hurrell per se, but it is more of like really about paying attention to exactly how the light is falling, getting that highlight on the nose to show off that beautiful little lump that he's got right there, the edge light that's just here and lighting up his ear, and just being very careful about the placement on this. Now this one is this is also done with the Profotos, and there's two of these. We have the octa coming from camera left. And the grid, which is normally a slash light or an edge light, is actually, lighting up quite a bit here. Now his body is turned away from the light. He's got a little bit of a smile. We kind of did things a little bit opposite. So now his body turned into the light. The edge light is really just an edge. And now he's got the little more serious expression. But there is a third light on the background here. Okay, you want to talk about
this? This is just one light, focusing Fresnel, regular hot light. And just casting that shadow.
It's just down low, and it's in this burn doors. So with the burn doors, you can block off the edges. Okay, and when it's you can control how sharp those edges are by how the Fresnel is focused, whether it's more flooded or whether it's more spot. Okay, so I actually shot this. I was one of the we're Fuji photographers, and I did the testing on the Fuji X-T2, which is when they introduced the Acros film simulation. So this is a fabulous model in Los Angeles. Her name is Mather Lauf, and she's got extra hair and dead animals, and she has costumes. She knows how to do the makeup. She's like one of my favorite people to work with. You'll see a bunch of pictures of her. So this is a 3-light setup. So the main light is coming from here. And the fill light, we normally think about a fill light coming straight in, but what George would do is he would use the fill light not just to fill the shadows, but also to cast the shadow on the background. And then there is a hair light here. And this is all done with Aries. So they're Aries hot lights focusing Fresnels. Okay, and this is the color version of that, and Lee dropped that background in. Yeah. Okay, so he quite often would do that. You remember the Paul McCartney shot? He would do that circle right behind their head. Normally, if I do a glow on the background, I kind of have the glow down much lower. But he really liked to do this, put that glow like right around here. So this too has 3 lights: the main light, the background light, and the hat light. And just another variation on that. He liked to get those lights high so that they could get those shadows from the eyelashes. Okay, and also he would always throw shadows on the background, and it could be anything. He would just grab anything to just put between the light and the background. So I included this because you can see that this is a light stand, and there's the lock on it, and we'd put up C-stands or whatever just to make something on the background. So 1 main light and 1 background light. That's Mather again, and here's Mather again. This is 2 lights. The main light is on her, And then there's another light behind her in the hallway. Oh, no, sorry. There's
There's
three lights.
three
There's three lights
yeah.
here. There's the main light that's on her. There's another light here that has the barn doors on it to make the slash going across the brick wall. And then there's an edge light to light up her hair and just pick up a little bit up here so that she doesn't blend in there. Okay, and this is just the one light low, a little bit of monster lighting, getting that shadow, but still, you know, watching the posing. You know, he was always so great at that. Okay, so another time with Mather, we did a couple of these in color, and this is just like a piece of chiffon that has kind of a bluish shimmery to it with this other shimmery material behind it. And when she showed up in this dress, we already had this. She had no idea, and we had no idea that we were going to match these colors. So I had to shoot this in color. So, but then here's a black and white of that, where she's turned away from the light here, but her face goes back into it. You know, they're all very storytelling. And so here I call this the double slash on both sides. And then in this case, the one main light is actually a fill light, which is just a little low. So it's a little bit monster lighting on her, but you know, you see the really direct light in her eyes. Okay, this is also done in January. Now, we got these new lights this last year called Nand lights, N-A-N-L-I-T-E-S. And they're really reasonable. They're LEDs, and they're very small. Oh, you're going to see them in a minute. And you can buy the Fresnel attachment for them. So we shot a whole bunch of stuff with them, and we were shooting at like 125th of a second at f4 at ISO 400. That's how bright they are. So here I think we just have, we've got the main light and a hair light. Yeah. But you're going to see, because you'll see the setups in this in just a second. So that's just another variation on the posing. So there you go. So here are the Nand lights. So you can get them with the Fresnel, and then you put the barn doors on them. So there you can see. And if I came and shot from over in this direction, then I would see some more shadowing on the background. But the pictures that you saw were over here from this angle. Okay, so.
Again, you know, this style is very, very dramatic. The shadows always, you know, like most of the time, go really dark, and you're not trying to fill in the shadows usually, and especially for men, you want that super dramatic look. Two lights, yeah. Okay,
so Lee did a presentation in early March or end of
yeah.
February, right before everything shut down.
Yeah, so these are Profoto Flashes that we've got a beauty dish there with a grid on it. There's also a grid on this sort of strip light.
It's a 1x3 strip.
That's acting as our hair light in this case. So you don't necessarily, it's difficult to find Fresnel attachments for flashes, but
well, Profoto
makes one. They're kind of expensive.
Yeah, they're like $2,000.
So very often what I'll do is I'll put a grid on the beauty dish, and the grid prevents the light from spilling all over the place and bouncing off of other things that it kind of creates a less contrast, and this creates more contrast. And as a hallmark of that style, that contrast is really important. Here you see again the similar setup.
And here,
with the grid.
Yeah, you can't really see this light over here. This is the strokes, but this has just got a grid on it on the background here. And then there's another light that's coming from. Oh, no, there's the main light. There's
I think the grid on the background.
The grid is
low.
bouncing.
It's
is
behind
bouncing.
this. It's behind.
But there's one right. Oh no.
That's a hair light.
That's the hair light.
That's the boom with the hair light.
Yeah. Okay, and here are the Nand lights. This is the Nand lights again.
And one of the things in a workshop with the Nand lights, because they're continuous lights, you can have everybody shooting at the same time. Well, obviously with flash, you can only have one photographer driving those flashes at a time. But we did fall in love with those Nand lights. They're quite good.
So so you saw this in the beginning, and I'm going to show you some stuff now that are examples of that we use George's pictures as inspiration to create our own. So this fabulous picture of Norma Shearer, and another one of my favorite models is Angie, and she came in and she had this backless dress, and so we were like, oh wow, well that would be perfect to do something like this with the Norma Shearer and off the shoulder and doing all that. Oh, I'm sorry, I went too, sorry. But we ended up, and again, you know, you always start to do something and then you try it. So I don't really see her back here, but it's that same kind of feeling. We've got something fluffy here, and Lee is going to tell you about how he treated this.
Oh, we just did kind of a split tone effect here. It's actually tritone, but it's yeah, just a Photoshop technique to blend these different colors in.
So this is basically just two lights, and I believe that this also was the beauty dish, and then a grid on the background with something shadowing so that we get a little bit of shadow detail back there. Okay, there's that picture of Paul. Ah. And here's Joe. So
Joe's one of our favorite. We see him when we go and teach this workshop in LA, and he's a fabulous musician. But we decided to kind of replicate that Paul McCartney shot.
McCarthy.
Yeah. So instead of leaning on the books, he's leaning on his guitar, and again, putting that sort of halo glow behind this, like a angelic light on the background here to get that kind of halo behind the head, very characteristic of George's style.
We normally in March teach the Hurrell lighting workshop at the Los Angeles Center of Photography in Los Angeles, and we taught it here in New England. We taught it in Boston in February this year for the first time, and we're hoping that we will do more when it's allowed to be have workshops again, so people can safely see each other and photograph. Okay, so Gregory Peck. It is Gregory Peck.
No, that's Gary Cooper.
Gary Cooper. Sorry, Gary Cooper. Okay, great shot. And we have the models that we have in Los Angeles. We've worked with. We have 4 of them. This is Jonathan Cripple. So we have Kadowski.
Jonathan, Joe
Kadowski, Matherlouth, and Angie. So the people that you've just seen, and we use them every time. And sometimes we get some others, but it's like because they're so good. All of them have costumes. They get it. They understand.
They're all actors too.
They're all actors. Yeah. They're not models. They're actors. So there's the Gary Cooper shot. Now, George shot Alexander Goodenough in my studio, and he came in, and it was a poster for the American Ballet Tour, and he did not want to do anything that had anything that looked like dancing. He was really kind of a sullen guy, and which, you know, unfortunately later on he did commit suicide after he was in Witness with Harrison Ford. But this picture to me, I think, is so incredibly powerful because there's such strength of personality here and you know, power. So we've got the perfect butterfly light here. We've got that hair light on the top. We've got a fill light that's coming in, and there's a little bit of light that's coming back from over here. Maybe there's a little bit of background light here too, but that pose with the black leather jacket. So one year we had this other model, and I was looking at her, and I'd done something where I kind of messed her hair up, and then I went, oh, we can do you with the Goodenough. So it's kind of reversed, and I avoided the catch light in the eye because I wanted to keep this really dark. But basically this is 2 lights. We've got the main light, which is the butterfly light, and the hair light, and, you know, messed up her hair and just had her do that really serious look with the dark shadows, and replicated the hand. And then back to the Mario Van Peebles shot. So I love this shot, and I just think that, and Mario was a great guy, by the way. He was.
By the way, Bobby's been trying to replicate this shot for years.
Yes, and I finally, in the last year, have been able to do it twice. So the first time was in Los Angeles. This is Derek Cobb. Derek is an actor, model, dancer, and singer. If you see OBB, you can look him up. I've worked with him in New York for like 8 or 9 years, and he moved to LA a year ago. So last March when we had this workshop, he had just moved, and I'm like, oh my God, you've got to come. So we didn't have all the props that George did, but I thought that this was a pretty good job of doing it with Derek. But we did it again at Hunt's with Joseph. And there's the shot, and there's the one where, again, it's not, I'm not trying to replicate it exactly. I'm just trying to get the general feeling on this. And I really love the expression on his face here. I think that is just terrific. Oh, I thought I had a production still there. Sorry. I thought I had one that showed the whole thing. Okay, so then we have, oh, and here we go. Okay, so we're back to the Mr. Bojangles. Now, basically, you know, oops. Basically, you can just have a piece of white foam core board and a piece of black foam core board and put one in front of the other, and that's all you need to do, which is what we did with Jonathan and him, you know, doing the hat tip with the black and the white. And we also did it with him in color, doing the clown thing with the hand into the black. So, you know, it's not that difficult to do. And we actually just took apple boxes and put black material on them so that he could be walking down that. And Jonathan, again, is like such a great character. Okay, so there's the Diana Ross shot.
This is another one that Bobbi's been trying to replicate for years.
And have not had success again until the last year. So we went to Prague last November for Fuji, the Fuji Czechoslovakia, or the Czech Republic. And we did a workshop there, and this girl was just fantastic, and she had the red dress. So again, slight variations on it. We have the main light, we have the hip light, and we have two background lights. So we didn't put another light here. We weren't really completely prepared for it. We didn't know we were going to do it, but we were able to get pretty close.
To really be fair, when we're doing these workshops, we're trying to move quickly and show different examples and create different scenarios for people to work with. And we're doing it really quickly. Or George would spend like all day getting that set up and getting everything, you know, perfectly aligned. This came off in maybe we spent half an hour.
Yeah,
this,
maybe
at most.
At the most, I don't even know it was that much.
We were ready.
Yeah, it was about a half an hour,
15
right.
minutes. It had been roughed in.
And then it was just working with her to get the pose just right and different expressions and slightly different head tilts. And Diana doesn't have her hand up to her hair, but on this one, I really liked her arm, and I liked that pose. I thought it made it a little bit more dynamic. So, so here is that setup. So here you can see again where we're using airy lights here. So here's the main light, okay, and then here is the background light. There's two background lights, and then the hip light is kind of behind here. You can't really see it. It's behind this guy. So I think it's behind this flag here, so it wouldn't come back into the camera. So that's the hip and the arm light right here. But you know, very particular on getting the posing on that to be just right. So this is another variation where you can see where the lights are. So you can see down here, here's a light in the background, and here's the, you know, so it's a slash light coming up behind the couch, and then the main light on her. It's just two main lights. You know, part of the reason I want to show you this is like you don't need to have a lot or have a great everything studio background. We found a piece of material in the studio and just threw it over the couch. So here's the shot. There we go. Okay, so here's looks like from that angle. I thought that this woman had the most incredible nose. I've been getting into profiles lately. So, and then Lee did this treatment with the background. But I mean, look at the pose and the eyes and everything about this. It's very George-like. Okay, and this was our male actor in here, and you're going to see what Lee did with this. We did a whole variety of stuff with him, and so he put him in downtown Prague.
Very simple compositing here, but it's interesting that the background was, I was shaking the camera, and I can combine the two things into one image.
So it worked pretty well. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation, and here I wanted to share this with you so that you can see. These are the different things that we do. We're right now not doing any in-person workshops. And normally we have 3 travel tours that we do every year. We do Venice Carnival every year. We do Tanzania in August for the Great Migration, and we do Iceland in September. We don't know what's going to happen for next year, but we're hoping that Venice is going to happen. We do have, this website is live. The Bobbi and Lee Photo Adventures here is the best way to find out what we're doing and what's going on. I'm working on some four-week-long online classes that you'll get a lesson, assignment, and critiques. I have some teachable classes. Lee has teachable classes. Lee's got like what, 16?
17, I think. Right
17,
now,
and I have 2. So anyway, this is how you can reach us. So okay, so I'm going to get out of the sharing now, and
we're back.
And we're back.
Well, welcome back.
Okay, hi.
That was terrific. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the love for the old Hollywood look and the love for photography. That's sort of, I think I actually, before I even thought about being a photographer, I knew I loved cinema. I loved cinematographers. I knew more about cinematographers than I ever thought I would about photography. So to see this is just like a throwback and a love for me. Deborah, I know that you love this type of look too. And I'm sure you have tons of questions for them. So I'm going to let you lead in on this one.
Okay.
Well, I just, was it that actually that George Hurrell came to rent space in your studio?
That's a good story.
That was we knew his rep, Marissa Mislansky, and when I first started the studio was in 1979, and there was 4 of us, and one of them was Alfredo DeMali, and he was friends with Marissa and her husband Michael Mislansky, who had one of the biggest PR agencies in town, and Marissa was French. So the first time she called me up, and she knew Alfredo, and although Alfredo was gone at that point, but she knew we had the studio. And in those days, in 1980, either you had a studio or you didn't. There wasn't any rental studios like there is now. You either had to have your own studio or find somebody that you knew. Otherwise, you were out of luck. So she called up and said, she was very heavy French accent. She's like, I'd like to rent the studio for George Hurrell. He's going to shoot Sharon Glass. And I'm like, okay. So she's rambling on. I'm taking down all this information about what the date and all that. And she kept just going, George. And finally I stopped her and I said, Marissa, I'm sorry, who did you say the photographer is? And she said, George Hurrell. And I said, are you saying George Hurrell? And she said, yes, George Hurrell. And Richard was sitting with me, and Richard used to take his lunch break. He used to work for Capitol Records, and he used to go to the library and study George's books. And I'm sitting there when I said George Hurrell, and Richard's looking at me over the desk. We totally flipped out. So when George came in, we all got dressed up. He came in, and we're walking around going, Mr. Hurrell, Mr. Hurrell. And as I said, he was like 5'3". He was wearing a fishing hat. He always had a little ascot. He was chewing gum. And he talked like this. Yeah, I like this place. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, this is good. Nah, don't call me Mr. Hurrell. I'm just George. I'm just a regular stiff. And it was like, okay. So that was the beginning. And, again, 12 years until he died, until he was too ill to work anymore. So, just an amazing experience. We loved him dearly. He was really great.
That sounds like it would make a great screenplay.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yes, photographers, and there's a lot, and you have the tunnel that goes to the studio. You could write something really amazing.
Yeah,
There's definitely a book there with lots of photos.
Yeah, and Richard has a lot of video of the shooting sessions.
Oh wow!
He just set up, but it's all on VHS. So. But he didn't do it in the very beginning, but then because he worked with them for 10 years and then he'd set it up. And sometimes the people would say, what's going on with the video here? Because they were a little afraid of what was happening. And Richard would explain it was just, to keep track of it's in documenting what George was doing and all that. And then they'd be okay. So, Peggy Fleming came in, the Olympic skater, and her agent would not allow it. And she was a sweetheart, but he would not. Absolutely
no
not.
Video.
No video. No video.
It's always the handlers that are the pain.
Yeah. we have there's some very funny moments that we have with some of the people who came in. I mean, it was really, there's some great video there. So.
That's wonderful. And I it must be so strange. How are you adapting now because of COVID and stuff like that? And how has it affected you guys? And obviously the trips and all of this, it's kind of crazy, right? I mean, the world gets turned upside down and when did you kind of realize this is a lot bigger than we thought it was, and how did it affect you guys?
Well, you tell the beginning of it.
We were in Venice for our Venice Carnival tour right before they closed Italy down, and in fact they canceled Carnival the day
our last day.
And we were walking around Venice going, usually it's really way more crowded. I'm surprised. And we found, of course, then we found out that they canceled Carnival.
Well,
and there was this whole COVID thing going on. And that's the first time we heard anything about it, really.
Well, no, we'd heard about COVID because remember they took our temperatures when we came off the plane.
Yeah, but we thought, like everybody else, it
was no big deal.
It's a flu or something.
Now, normally this is my 9th year. This year was my 9th year of leading the carnival tour, and we always end on Sunday because Monday and Tuesday night obviously is the culmination of everything. Monday and Tuesday, normally the streets are so packed you can't walk through. So we always cancel the tour on Sunday anyway. So Sunday afternoon, we were hearing a little bit of stuff, and we have a farewell dinner on Sunday night. And it was while we were at the farewell dinner where somebody got it on their phone and said, as of midnight Sunday night, all the rest of the carnival events would be canceled. Well, there's 20,000 people in San Marco Square. So not a good idea to put 20,000 people together like this when, something is happening. At that time, from what we heard, there was an elderly couple that was in the hospital in Venice, and that was all there was in Venice. Most of the cases at that point were in northern Italy, north of Milan. So we came home and people are going, oh my God, are you okay? And we're like, we have a better chance of being struck by lightning twice than we do getting COVID. Within the next 3 weeks,
it's
day by day, everything canceled. We were supposed to go in March to Los Angeles for the Hurrell workshop. That canceled. And then, of course, everything that we planned for the year was gone. So everything is gone. So, we've been doing a lot of Zoom presentations. Debbie and I did one of the first ones, which was early Zoom, and it was
what a nightmare.
It was
Zoom. I think it took Zoom a while to catch up. They were suddenly inundated, and we had something. It was at 7 p.m. and we found out we couldn't figure out what was going on. We found out later that all the webinars that were at 7 p.m.
crashed that day.
Yeah, it was like there were so many.
I think I remember that one day.
Yeah. But that was.
But we muddled through. We got through. But so we've been doing a lot of these presentations. I've got a couple more coming up, which I'll tell you about tomorrow. I'm doing one for Drag the Shutter for Hunts. It's free, and you can go to Hunt's Photo and you can find out about that. So that's tomorrow. It's Dragging the Shutter is balancing strobe and ambient light, as most of you know. And then I'm doing Flowers with Flash for Hunts in September. And I'm doing a 2-part dramatic portrait lighting for Unique Photo, which will be October 1st and October 8th. And that's going to be, the first part is going to be using 1 and 2 lights, and the second part is going to be using 3 lights and more, plus dragging the shutter for people. So we have that stuff coming up. In terms of work, we have actually done some product shoots, which, people come to the door and they hand us a box, and then we take it and we work on it. So we've done two pretty good product shoots that have been okay. And I've been doing some personal project stuff. I've been, I'm always working on something to come up with something else. And I just did a friend of mine who has a small airplane, and we live in Carver, Mass, which is next door to Plymouth. And there's a little tiny airport.
Oh yeah.
And I shot him in his plane at twilight last Friday with the most amazing sunset. It was
killer.
It was just incredible.
And you'll show that in the Drag the Shutter.
I'll show that in the Drag the Shutter class tomorrow. And I did another friend of mine. We have lots of musician friends. We have some musician shoots coming up. I'm doing a CD cover for some friends as well as their individuals. And I just did another friend of mine who is a keyboardist is now sponsored by Korg, which is, they make keyboards.
Yeah, they've been around a long time now.
Yeah, he's just become an ambassador, and he needed a photo for that.
Oh,
so that was really cool. We went into a really old theater in New Bedford, Mass, and lit him up, brought all the lights, lit him up, had lights behind him, did all this stuff, and so made him some really great pictures for his page on the Korg page.
Do you mainly still work with hot and constant lights, or are you kind of gravitating using a kind of mix of strobes, or are you just kind of going back and forth now in your own work?
It's mostly strobes, mostly, I love my pro photos. I just love my pro photos. And it's like
the B10s and the
the A1Xs.
When you can put a B10 in your travel bag with your cameras, it changes everything.
we took 2 with us to Italy.
Yeah.
And and we had with the best costumers in the world, the Rose sisters. We did this whole huge setup with them with two B10s and 1 A1. And, you know, it was fabulous. So, and it's like the airplane shot. How was I going to be able to do a picture, you know, I mean, with 200-foot extension cords to try to find some place to plug in. So, you know, I mean, it's just great. The Nand lights we got
changed the game. I mean,
totally. Yeah. The Nand lights we got specifically to do the Hurrell stuff, but we still do the strobes with the Hurrell stuff as well.
So the difference of working,
lights are great.
When you're working with talents and stuff like that, and you're working with, you know, the Hurrell lights and these hot lights and these constant lights, opposed to a strobe, how do you create and work with your, because that constant light of someone that's not used to it really is kind of hard to be under. How do you deal with that, and how do you kind of work differently between those two different you know, styles?
Can I take that?
Well, I will say these little LED lights are not hot in the same way that
The old lights,
big old Mole Richardson, you know.
But if they have a fill light right in their face.
So, I mean, normally we avoid, you know, doing the fill light and use reflectors, and that's a little more comfortable for people.
But if we do, we try to like turn it off when we're not shooting, turn it off so it's not killing them.
Really, it is always more comfortable to shoot with flash.
Yeah.
Because it just is. So most of the time, I think, well, that's what we kind of default to, is using the.
Do you prefer you prefer working with strobes now just because of the ease of it? And
well, you know, I've always worked with strobes, and they're
just our experience with it. You know, we're so used to it that that's what we're going to do first.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you know, obviously, if we have to shoot video, or we're really trying to replicate exactly that George Hurrell style, it's really useful to have the focusing Fresnels. And these Nand lights are way more reasonably priced than even just that one Fresnel attachment for the Profotos. You know? Yeah,
I mean, you can get 3 of the Nand lights with the Fresnels and the burn doors for under $1,000.
That's pretty amazing.
So, and their
Fresnel attachment is
that's the whole thing together.
No, but I mean the Profoto.
Oh, the Profoto Fresnel attachment's over $2,000.
Yeah, the Profoto. No matter what you get on Profoto is expensive. Even like a trigger is $400. Yeah, I use the B10s too. They're fabulous and they're consistent.
Yeah, it's so worth it. It really is worth it.
A good light. Yeah. And so, how are you going to spend the rest of your World Photography Day? You guys going to relax today? Is this it? Or?
Well, I've got another presentation tomorrow, so I have a little bit on that. So
there's a beer with my name on it.
He's got a beer.
You've earned it.
We're shooting tomorrow. We're shooting some of my musician friends. They're practicing in a backyard, and we're bringing the B10s, and we're going to do some of those. So that'll be the interior of the CD. So we're doing that tomorrow, and then we have some other friends Friday night playing on their driveway. So we're doing some shots for them. But for the rest of the day today, I think we're about done.
Do you have some go-to modifiers that you're always carrying with you, or?
Oh, you know, I there's something that I didn't say. I have a favorite saying: everything depends upon everything. So, you know, it's like
true.
I take what I need depending upon what the shot is. You know, it's like when we did the airplane, I took the 4x6. It's like, how often do I take a 4x6?
Yeah, we brought all kinds of stuff with us, and you know, I just have to tell you, we're always, you know, it's like she's a Girl Scout, right? Be prepared. So she's always prepared. Bobbi brings a tripod every single time, to every photo shoot, and I have yet to see her use it. But it's there.
I use it on the product shots.
On the product shots, yeah, but no, every time she's shooting people, she's bringing a tripod. And I'm like, why do you bother? You never use a tripod.
Because I'm going to want it sometime.
It's going to be that one day.
She doesn't bring it
one day.
She's going to want it.
A lot of the stuff I do with the drag the shutter, I'm actually shaking or zooming or spinning or doing something, so I can't be on a tripod. So, you know, a lot of the stuff for the drag the shutter is from Venice, from the costumers at dawn or dusk. And, you know,
we have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, someone's asking where to get the Nand light kits. I know they have them at Adorama. If you're an AP, gives a chance to mention that if you're an APA member, you get the Adorama 10% discount.
There you go. Hey, that's great.
And someone else asked, what was the name of the LED lights they were talking about?
That's the Nand lights.
Those are the Nand lights.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are LEDs. Those are the Nand lights. Yeah.
It's great. I mean, that's you know, you always like to hear, you know, what people are using, and especially the recommendations like the Nand lights and stuff like that. And especially if they've seen so much of what you have been shooting and the practicality of what you're using, that's really a high recommendation. It's wonderful. Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been
fantastic.
so exciting. And it wouldn't have been the same kind of wonderful photo fest day and our first outing on this festival without you guys. So I really thank you for
thank you.
being at our very first one. And
I have to tell you that I was an APA member in Los Angeles when they first started. And I was vice president of the LA chapter for
Is that right?
Yeah, for 4 or 5 years.
Oh.
Back in the late 90s. I moved back to the East Coast in 2001. So
thank you for paving the way for us.
Oh yeah, totally, APA is the best.
We love it. We love it. Closing out, where can people find you and look up more of your stuff? If you want to bring up that last slide, or just let people know the best places to find you guys.
It's pretty easy. Here we go.
I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
any parting goodbyes on your part, Deb?
I just want to say thank you again. You've elevated the day by being here, and it's great we could bring in, not just your current presentation, but I like bringing the history of photography in the way you were able to bring that in. It was fantastic, and thank you for your generosity of spirit.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really honored to be a part of this today for World Photography.
Such a pleasure. We wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll get to do something again soon.
Thank you, and thanks to you two for hanging in there all day long.
We're in the final quarter here.
All right.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, we were here earlier today, and we got to sit down with Mike Kaminsky and talk about APA for Good and New York City SALT. We're going to revisit it, and we have its founder here with us. And I want to say hello, hello, hello. How are you? Thank you for joining us. You're live.
Thanks.
You've been so busy, but thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. I've just had 2 weeks offline, so.
Was that good? Or did you go through a detox? Did you kind of shake a little bit, or was it all right, or was it totally what you needed?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was just, we didn't go anywhere. I just did projects around the house, but it's, I'm sure just like everybody else, for the past 4 months, five months now, since mid-March,
it doesn't seem like 2 years now. Like it's been, so much has happened in such a little amount of time. It feels like years have passed, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to lead in with what question that I've been asking all my guests today, and you are one of our fabulous guests that will be here. On the most personal level, what is photography to you?
Wow. I think it's a way of expressing what's inside you, and it's also access to the rest of the world. I mean, the camera gives you access to so much more than you could potentially have access to just on your own. And so, I've experienced that myself as a photojournalist, and I definitely experience it through my students. In how the camera is such a powerful social tool for them, especially in high school, as they're trying to make friends, and all of a sudden they have a camera and they're known as a school photographer, and that status gets elevated, which is so important when you're in high school.
I know it's such a fabulous thing. So, why don't you tell me how you got involved with SALT and how it originated and how it started and all of those wonderful things, because I think
Sure. SALT started about 12 and a half years ago, actually a little bit longer than that. In 2005, I started a class for a group of middle school boys in Washington Heights. And we used little disposable point and shoot cameras and got our film processed at Costco. And I taught them how to see. And that evolved, obviously, over time, to use digital cameras. and to start a nonprofit because I saw the impact that that photography had in their lives as not only a tool for them to learn about the creative aspects of themselves, but as a tool that helped them propel or gave them a pathway into higher education and an understanding of the creative career paths in New York City, which a lot of our kids don't have access to.
How did you migrate from the photography into this, and how did you find yourself starting it? I mean, where were you and said, I have to do this?
I think like anything in life, it was just one foot after the other. It definitely wasn't something I planned when I first started that first class. I wrote a business plan to kind of make sense of it, and it won in a couple contests, and it gave me confidence to think that people might like fund this idea. And so far they have, and hopefully they still will. But did that answer your question? Sorry.
Absolutely. I mean, at the heart of it, if you were going to tell like that, I don't want to say the elevator pitch, but what is Soul Fuel, and how do you describe it to someone? Yeah.
It's a bridge, a family, and a launch pad. And I think those three words are significant in all kinds of different ways. It's a family because we don't just spend a 10-week class with kids. We will spend, in some cases, I've been working with some kids for 15 years, and one of them's out in the studio in back of me right now, fulfilling print orders. So if anybody brought a print, you should get your print soon. And I think that's what the kids will say, is that SALT has really become their family. They've built friendships. They have a home here. The relationships and community that we've developed are really significant. And it's a bridge. It's a bridge from underserved communities into the creative world that we all know. And that bridge gives access and opportunity that a lot of our students and their families don't have access to. No. And it's a launch pad because we've launched careers. I think a lot of you have seen some of our alumni, Malik and Mamadi. Yes. Christian Rodriguez and Danny Martinez, Nora Molina are some of our superstars that are really making their way in a really strong, impactful way in the creative world right now. So
you've done all kinds of things with these students and taught them so many things. And I think, almost 13 years ago, you actually kind of wrote and produced the little music video with them. Did you not?
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's been a while since you saw that. You know what? Let's take a look at that.
Oh my God.
I did a dream. I wish I could help my mom pay the bills, bring it back to the old days when we just chill.
To be a child in the hood is a huge struggle. The pressure to stay in school and stay out of trouble is huge. Kids getting abused, black and blue bruised, not many paths to choose. That's the street rules.
Dreams are for believers, wishes are for those who proceeded and achieve it. People on the block are getting real mad. They see you boys getting big real fast. They're hurting like they're walking on glass. I wish everybody in the world follow God's path. Tears roll down my eyes, that's my wish. Make sure to proceed it. I'll make sure that I achieve it.
Fame, wealth, and power, who doesn't want that? But at the end of the day, is that where my heart's at? I wish everyone could see through my eyes, bring the whole world together and put it back to life. Jesus said, please follow me, and at the end of all days, your soul shall be free.
I'm living in a world that's holding me down. I wanna be free like a bird and fly off the ground. So many problems, so much pain. All these thoughts are making me insane.
Scientist,
I dare to dream.
veterinarian, mathematician, astronaut,
clothes designer. No matter how hard it may seem, I have a share to get out the hood. To get out the hood.
Well, having grown up in New York, that feels like an authentic, how did this come about? And I know you're working on amazing projects, and this is 13 years ago. What are you doing with the kids nowadays? And, what kind of projects? And because what's so amazing about SALT is, and I was talking to Michael earlier about this, is it's the education I think all of us would need. And it seems a better education than most of us are getting at these schools we pay thousands and thousands of dollars for, because you're teaching real life work and how to get a job and how to write a proposal and how did this all come together? And what are you doing nowadays now that it's 13 years later from this?
Well, in a lot of ways, we're doing the same things. We're using our network to, just like that video came about because I was sharing a studio with a music producer. And and it was, he was like, how about I teach them how to make a song, and they did, and it was a really fun activity, and they learned about audio through it. We still do the same thing in terms of we're still bringing in people from the industry to work with our kids, and it's really just kind of through people we know. Right now, something I'm most excited about, because I'm teaching again, and I haven't taught in a couple years, because I mostly just run the organization and fundraise, is I have started a fellowship program for our alumni, and we started it in April. It meets once a week, and the artist reps from Bernstein and Andruli are teaching the next 6 to 8 classes on the business of photography. Actually artist business, because a lot of our older kids aren't just photographers, they're illustrators and graphic designers. And so it's really, SALT has always been about using our social capital to bring people like you and, the other people listening into our network to give back and to show them what their path was like. And that's in a very basic level, what we do, and kind of what I get excited about, because it really is social capital that I think makes the program really powerful and successful.
And what are you doing now? Is a lot of people donating time and money and fundraising. What are some of your biggest challenges right now?
How to stay sustainable. We've succeeded for 12 and a half years. This pandemic has been tough.
Yeah.
I've spent the last 4 months just trying to save the organization, and I can thankfully say we're able to keep our doors open right now. And I think, like everyone else, we have money challenges. Photography costs a lot of money to do, and thankfully we just partnered with Nikon, and they're giving us camera consignment, they're giving us equipment. They have a print sale going on right now, and they're ambassadors of, some of them have agreed to mentor some of our students, and so I'm really excited about the beginning of that relationship.
How exciting is that? And we had someone else just pop in here. Michael, how you doing? Come on in, say hello.
Michael.
Good, man. I had so much fun the first time. I had to come back.
I know, right? I know.
Did you show the video already?
We showed a different. We haven't showed the video. We showed the music video, which
Danny's
music
video.
No, not that one.
So we're about to go into the next video, but how do people get involved, and what are the different ways? Because some people are like, oh, I don't even live in New York, or I'm not a photographer. I'm like, what are the different ways people can help and kind of really assist in this?
Well, I'm always going to say you can make a donation.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the same thing I said before.
Yeah, the truth is the truth.
Right. We're a 501c nonprofit, so everything is tax deductible. We are always looking for mentors. We haven't quite started to look for mentors for our new school year. We will be looking at.
Is that mentorship going to change and become a Zoom mentorship? Is it going to have? You're going to play it by ear and adapt it? So, what are you doing now to are you making decisions by the day, or it must be very tough right now to not have the answers, but to make decisions on the future?
Yeah, we know we're not coming. We know we're not coming back for live classes, and definitely not for this semester, right? So I think that the greatest thing about that is that it opens the mentorships up, right? Prior to that, you kind of had to be in New York to be involved and come to the classes and stuff. But I think that this actually broadens our horizons for people that can participate, because we're not going to be live for the foreseeable future anyway. It's been a barrier in the past for folks to mentor the students, but now that those barriers are down right now.
This is a good point. We're going to play the video once again so people that haven't been here and stuff like that, and then we can kind of talk about it on the out. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Alicia Hansen, and I'm the founder of a photography program in New York City for inner city kids.
I'm going to pause this because this seems like it's a Calvin Klein ad. You look so like in the studio and it's fabulous. You know, look at you with the hair. Like it's very good. We're going back into it now.
Called NYC Salt. The uniqueness of our program is that it's taught exclusively by creative professionals working in New York City. It's a value of ours that our students have an opportunity to learn from professionals at the height of their talent and creative ability.
Hi, I'm Adam Chinitz, and I'm one of the teachers who's lucky enough to teach here at SALT. I bring to the program a broad background in photography, especially on the technical side. I get to show the kids the cameras, the lights, the computers, and get them interested in using all this stuff to create and realize visions that they have on their own. And watching that process is an amazing experience.
Another unique part of SALT is that we're not just teaching these kids an art, but we're teaching them our trade. For example, we're teaching them how to build.
That was my fault. I'm so sorry.
Build out an estimate, how to copyright their work, how to work with clients, how to plan out a photo shoot, so that these kids come away knowing that they can make a living as an artist.
So one night, Adam and Alicia decided to teach a headshot class. I found it pretty interesting that I can make money with my camera. So I went out, started talking to people, and my girlfriend's mother, who's a principal at a daycare, brought me in. I shot some headshots, created a pricing list, and sold prints to the parents. I made about $900, and now I'm rehired again this year.
Growing up, I really wanted to become a zookeeper. I always took artistic classes, and I loved drawing animals, and I guess that was a lot more acceptable than becoming an artist in my community, because you work to get money. You know, you get rough and dirty, and you get paid for it. But I guess through NYC Salt, I got to learn that that isn't the case after all, that you can be passionate about something and love something and actually get paid for it. Art is something that everyone appreciates.
The day that Adam taught the class about lights was the first time that I actually saw myself wanting to shoot in a studio with a set that I created. Something about the class that Adam was teaching that day just really made me want to sit down and brainstorm ideas and set my own studio and put on my own lightings and have an assistant and just make sure that every aspect of my shot was me.
A couple times a year, we hold gallery shows to celebrate what the kids are doing and to invite the community in to celebrate with us.
Back when I started the program, I was super shy. I had always taken art classes but didn't think my art was any good. And I guess a cool thing about the class is that we have gallery shows. And the first one was, I guess, significant to me because it was Alicia's show and she had put up some of our work. I guess I had 6 up, and that was a big deal to me because, you know, my work I didn't think was any good. I sold the first 2 shots, and I think those were the only 2 shots that sold. And I guess that just, I don't know, built up my confidence a lot within my work and slowly within myself.
And all of a sudden I had like 15 people surrounded around me looking at my work, and I felt amazing. I was like sweating that day. That's how good I felt. And yeah, there were so many people around me. I've never had that type of attention in my life.
When I found out that this woman bought my picture, I was like ecstatic. She wanted me to sign it. I was only 16 at the time. Somebody buying and wanting me to sign something for them was like mind-boggling to me. It was just an amazing experience.
Some of our students have been with us since the very beginning, and as you can see by their stories, the program has helped them with more than just their photography skills.
I felt like like I was actually doing something with my life, something positive, something that I was proud of.
I learned how to write resumes, how to perfect essays, how to brainstorm, how to sit down and concentrate. Everything that I'm gonna need in life, I learned here first.
The heart of NYC SALT is to inspire these kids, teaching them that they are creative individuals. We believe that every kid is made for greatness. Our students have responded to our belief in them. This year, we have 8 seniors graduating from high school and going on to college. That's a 100% success rate for us. All of these kids will be the first generation in their family to go to college.
Before NYC SALT, I didn't think I was going to go to college. I didn't think it was worth it to go and pay thousands of dollars and stay in debt for something that I could have done without going to school. But through NYC SALT and through my internship, I got to find out that, college isn't only academic, that college actually teaches you about life and maturity, and you become a better person through it, and more of the person that you are and want to be. And I'll be the first to be going to college this upcoming fall, and I'm going to Savannah College of Art and Design coming September.
In 2008, Alicia Hansen set forth to use photography to inspire students towards college and careers in the creative industry. We work to see our students learn to think of work as career and find vocations that they love. The mission of NYC SALT is to engage our students
Nora,
to professionally
you're doing a great job with the VO, but you folks already know about this, right? You don't want to hear about this. You want to meet the NYC SALT alumni. So here they are.
Hey Alicia, so this thank you is about a decade overdue. I just wanted to say thank you so much for putting so much care and so much emphasis on taking care of the students, especially myself. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have accomplished a lot of the things that I have. And even out of school, you've continued to support us, and I'm really grateful for that, so thank you.
I guess I would say I'm just thankful, not only for me, but just, your willingness to just deal with, all of our individual challenges and kind of working with us throughout the program to see something else within us, not just looking at the surface level frustration or situation that might have come up, but really giving us a chance.
Hey Alicia, why are you being so tough on us? Thanks for the tough love.
Hey Alicia, I'd like to say thank you for not only creating a program for inner city kids like me, but for creating a family.
But I want to thank you for all the amazing experiences, all the hard work that you've put in that has translated into all of us SALT students having a wider opportunity at chasing the dreams that we have.
Alicia, basically my white mother. Everyone's gonna say thank you, but thank you. Especially recently, I've gone through a lot of emotional shit, and you've been there for me, so thanks.
Hey Alicia, I want to thank you for letting me be in SALT for 1 year and helping me and guiding me in the right path towards my career.
Hey Alicia, I just want you and Adam to know that you guys are like the parents that I feel like I never had growing up, and I'm really grateful for all the opportunities you guys have given me, and I honestly don't see where my life will be without you two, and I'm really grateful. Please keep doing what you guys are doing. Love you guys.
Hey Alicia, for your birthday gift, we had to sign and print. And at the time, I wrote really tiny, so I don't know if you found it, but what I wrote was, thank you for changing my life, because you did.
So I wish everybody could see what I saw, which is I get to see you guys watching this video. And it seems like every time I see your reactions to it, it's like you're watching this for the first time. You are a proud parent. You go through this, I see the tears in your eyes, the happiness in your eyes. I see the all the emotion that you've gone through. What's it like watching that? And what are these moments for you? Because I was talking earlier with Michael about this, and it's one thing you're giving so much to these kids, but they are giving so much to you, and you're benefiting just as much, if not more. Can you talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, fine.
The reason I had asked if you played the videos yet is because I knew she was going to cry. I just was wondering if it happened yet. So.
Actually, it's funny because like couple of them are sitting right next door. So, I mean, like, what's really lovely about watching these videos is that, I mean, I've watched these kids grow up and been through, you know, recently some deaths in their families, and, you know, some graduations, and all those really wonderful life events that, like, gosh, I forgot that first video. How young some of them are.
Oh, the wonderful internet and how we can just pull stuff.
It's like watching home movies and then as babies.
It's really beautiful. I mean, and so can you tell me how do you find these students, or how do they find you, and how do they get into the program? How does that work?
So a lot of it's been word of mouth. This year, for the first time, I'm working directly with our alumni to recruit new students. So we are going to hold program this fall. As Michael said, everything's going to be virtual. And our alumni are reaching out into their communities and to their brothers and sisters and their friends and their old high schools. And they're the ones that are choosing the next class of kids that will come through our program, which I think is just such a lovely way to do it. We'll have Nora, one of our alumni, first alumni, I think she was in that video. Her little sister is going to come up through our program this year.
My God.
So that's really fun. So I love the idea of there being a generational aspect to our program. I love the idea of going really deep into a community, as opposed to really wide, and just in having a lifelong impact. Because Nora's sister watched her go to college, and she went to Syracuse on a full scholarship. And so, you know, now Nora is going to be kind of that mentor that will have more valuable information than I think any of our mentors could ever give her sister, because Nora has been through the program. And I just think that's really lovely. We are focusing more directly on the Washington Heights Inwood neighborhood of Manhattan this year. And another little proud moment that I've had during this pandemic is we have partnership with the Cloisters. And
Oh, wow.
we will be opening a new program sometime in 2021 in the Cloisters for the Washington Heights neighborhood. And so through the fall, we'll be looking at just building better relationships with the schools up there, so that the kids in the schools know about this new program that's coming about. So, I mean, I guess if there's anybody on this call that knows people we can connect with in Washington Heights to just connect more with the public school system up there, or even community organizations, then that would be a way that people could help as well. But I'm really excited about that.
That's exciting news and so wonderful. And please, if you're out there, you never know what, you know, a little connection or a little thing, how much it can, you know, landslide and snowball into something that can really help out people for life. Because I know that in our lives, you know, all of us have had that one person that if we didn't meet them, we might not have turned out the way we did. And it changed everything for us. And SALT does that on so many levels for so many kids, and it is so important. So I beg all of you, if you don't know about NYC SALT, please check it out. They're a fabulous organization, and you know, they do print sales, they do have their book, they have their donations. That you can, if you're a professional, you can donate time and really help them out. Are there any other ways that I'm forgetting or not saying here? Or?
We have an associates board that we're trying to develop. So if you'd like to,
I forgot about that.
Be a part of that, we are recruiting, and it's a
sign me up. Damn it, I'm there. I'm there.
All right, this is being recorded live. We have
it is.
on YouTube.
There's no going back on this one. It's
board.
gone live to 15 different places. So yeah, I'm on the record for that one. I am definitely.
You know, I think too is that, you know, and we spoke a little bit about this morning, it's not necessarily, you don't have to be the artist, right? There are so many people in our world that we have to interact with in order to have successful productions and create content. Producers, techs, you know, folks that are well established in business, entrepreneurs, right? how invaluable is talking to a successful entrepreneur, one of our students that wants to go out and launch their own business. I mean, think about, you know, the kind of support that we give. They graduate, they go out into the real world, and we're doing their taxes. We're doing their estimates for them. I'm making sure that they're paying quarterly. So those are, you know, those life lessons.
Yeah. It sounds like you're making them more responsible than you're going to be.
But yeah, there's, you know, there is the exposure to the actual crafts itself that they're interested in. But for instance, we talked earlier, Alicia mentioned Nora. Nora, although she's a skilled photographer, she's an incredible graphic designer right now. So if you work at an agency and you have internship programs and you want to bring in junior designers, there are students in the program too that are leaning towards those types of careers as well. So it's a broad spectrum. We're looking for input from the industry as a whole, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And Deborah, did you want to add anything on this while we got this both here captive? Live, have to answer our questions no matter what we ask.
Well, I think you pretty much asked the question I wanted to let people know. Ask the question that people are asking themselves is how did they get involved, which you've already answered that question, and also to go to the NYC SALT website and they can.
And it is nycsalt.org, correct?
Yep.
Correct.
I have a very specific volunteer request. If there's anybody whose superpower is organizing equipment, I'm in the studio all day tomorrow trying to figure out our gear allocation to kids with Devin. So we're on 29th Street. If somebody wanted to come help, just organize.
Devin, from what I hear, was the one we saw in the video with the bow tie and just love that.
Now he's come full circle. Now he's running the alumni program. It's amazing to watch. It's amazing to watch him boss around the other alumni. I love it.
How many alumni do you have after all these years?
A little over 100, I think. Yeah.
And what percentage of them have gone on to college?
Just about all.
Wow. It's 100% acceptance over the years.
We have a few exceptions with kids that are undocumented. That's been a challenge I haven't quite figured out how to surmount. Yeah.
Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and celebrating our very first World Photo Fest here at APA, and hopefully we'll be doing this year after year after year after year. I wish you continued success, and obviously now that I'm going to be volunteering, I'm going to be there to try and help. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being part of this.
Yeah, we should be thanking you, quite honestly.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
2 slots. It's you know, it's I'm not thanking you from me. I thank you from the students, because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, we're their voice that they don't have right now, but you know, hopefully they go through the program and they can express themselves. So thank you from all of them as well.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.